All right, my friends, today we're going to be rereading The Mysterious Tadpole, written and illustrated by Stephen Kellogg. You can either follow along with me on here or get your paper copy of the story out and read along there. As we read today, we're going to be pausing to discuss questions out loud. Anytime you need to stop, just push the pause button and then you continue on by pushing play again. "Greetings, nephew," cried Louis's Uncle McAllister. "I've brought a wee bit of Scotland for your birthday." "Thanks," said Louis. "Look, Mom and Dad, it's a tadpole." Louis named him Alphonse and promised to take very good care of him. All right, my friends, we're going to pause there for a moment. In this picture, we see Uncle McAllister. Look at how Uncle McAllister's dressed. Is that how we dress? No, he's wearing what we call a kilt. In Scotland, men can wear this traditional outfit that may be different colored and look a bit differently, but they wear a traditional kilt, which looks like a skirt. If you've ever seen anyone playing bagpipes in a parade, they'll wear an outfit similar to this. We also see our main character, Louis, and both of his parents. Let's think about our setting. Where are they right now? Yes, they're at home. Good job. Let's continue reading on. Louis took Alphonse to school for show and tell. "Class, here we have a splendid example of a tadpole," exclaimed Miss Shelbert. "Let's ask Louis to bring it back every week so we can watch it become a frog." Miss Shelbert was amazed to see how quickly Alphonse grew. "Maybe it's because he only eats cheeseburgers," said Louis. When Alphonse became too big for his jar, Louis moved him to the kitchen sink. "He's the perfect pet," said Louis. Let's take a closer look at the picture on page 387. What do you notice in the background here? Do you see this chart? It says how the tadpole becomes the frog. Look at the stages there. How are the animals in the chart different from Alphonse? What does this tell you about Alphonse? Even though this story is a fantasy, we have some facts right here with this chart. We can keep this in our head, so grab that, put that in your brain, because you will need to come back to page 387 later on when you do your writing assignment. This information might help you. Now, our next question here before we move on is, how should Louis saying, "maybe it's because he only eats cheeseburgers," be a clue that Alphonse is different? Right, because tadpoles don't eat cheeseburgers. Louis and Alphonse loved to play games. "Be careful, Louis," said his mother. "The living room is not a soccer field. Something is going to get broken." And she was right. That same day, the soccer ball slammed into Aunt Tabitha's antique lamp. "This tadpole is out of control," said Louis's mother. "Something must be done." "It won't happen again," promised Louis. "I'll take Alphonse to obedience school." Obedience school, friends, is where you might take your puppy so that they can learn to sit and follow directions. On page 388, what lets you know that this story is fantasy? Yes, Alphonse is playing soccer. He is standing on two legs. He doesn't look like a familiar animal, does he? Do real animals act like this? The only animals at the obedience school were dogs. Some of their owners stared at Alphonse suspiciously. "Pretend you're a dog," whispered Louis. Alphonse tried to bark, but it sounded like a burp. Why do people give Alphonse strange looks at the obedience school? Yes, the school is for dogs. Alphonse does not look like a dog. "Hold on a minute," said the trainer. "What kind of dog is this?" "He's a hairless spotted water spaniel from Scotland," explained Louis. Let's pause here for a moment. What is funny about the way Louis describes Alphonse to the trainer? Yes, he does. He describes him as if he is a dog. Alphonse quickly learned to sit, stay, and retrieve. He graduated at the top of his class. "My parents will be very pleased," said Louis. But Louis's parents were not pleased when Alphonse outgrew the sink and had to be moved to the bathtub. "This shower is too crowded," complained Louis's father. "This bathroom is a mess," moaned Louis's mother. Friends, what problem does the obedience school solve? What problem continues? Feel free to pause and discuss, and then you can push play again when you're ready to continue. The problem the obedience school solved was Alphonse learned to listen. He is no longer out of control. But Alphonse is still growing, and he barely fits in the bathtub. At least Louis's classmates enjoyed Alphonse, who was still making weekly visits. "Wow, show and tell is more fun than recess," they yelled. But one day, Miss Shelbert decided that Alphonse was not turning into an ordinary frog. She asked Louis to stop bringing him to school. Friends, remember, when we draw conclusions, it's because the author does not always tell us everything. On this page, I see that the teacher decides that Alphonse is not a tadpole. I can see that from the picture. I can infer that Alphonse will not turn into a frog. Since I don't think he will become a frog, and since he keeps getting bigger and bigger, I predict we will find out he is a very rare creature. By the time summer vacation arrived, Alphonse had outgrown the bathtub. "We could buy the parking lot next door and build him a swimming pool," suggested Louis. "Be sensible," declared Louis's parents. "Swimming pools are expensive." "We're sorry, Louis, but this situation has become impossible. Tomorrow you will have to take your tadpole to the zoo." "But I can't put my friend in a cage," cried Louis. Friends, how does Louis feel about Alphonse? How do you know? We're also going to pause here and draw some more conclusions. Remember, the author does not always tell us everything. We need to look for clues in the story and use what we know from our own lives to figure ideas out on our own. What clues did the illustrations give you about Alphonse? He is so large, his head takes up the space in that window. On page 392, we can also see the children climbing all over him. And I know how big children are. You can just look at yourself. So I can tell that Alphonse is huge. How can you tell He probably isn't a tadpole. Tadpoles do not get to be this big in real life. That tells me that he really likely is not a tadpole. The author did not tell us this in the story, and it makes it funnier that the main character thinks Alphonse is a tadpole, while us as the readers know that he isn't. That night, Louis was very sad until he remembered that the gym in the nearby high school had a swimming pool. Louis hid Alphonse under a carpet and smuggled him inside. Nobody uses this place during the summer, whispered Louis. You'll be safe here. After making sure that Alphonse felt at home, Louis said goodbye. I'll be back tomorrow with a big pile of cheeseburgers, he promised. Louis came every afternoon to play with Alphonse. In the mornings, he earned the money for the cheeseburgers by delivering newspapers. The training continued as well. Louis would say, Alphonse, retrieve! And Alphonse would succeed every time. As summer vacation passed, Louis became more and more worried about what would happen to Alphonse when the high school kids returned. Let's stop and think about these 2 pages. Reread if you need to, and then pause to answer this. What things on these 2 pages does Louis do that show how much he cares about Alphonse? Then answer, why is the swimming pool a good place for Alphonse? When you're ready, you can push play again. After his first day of classes, Louis ran to the high school and found the gym bustling with activity. The swim team was heading for the pool. Stop! Cried Louis. On your mark, bellowed the coach. Get set. Excuse me, sir, said Louis. Go! Roared the coach. How can the reader tell that neither the coach nor the swimmers know Alphonse is in the pool? Alphonse rose to the surface to welcome the swimmers. It's a submarine from another planet, shrieked the coach. Call the police, call the Navy. No, it's only a tadpole, said Louis. He's my pet. The coach was upset and confused. You have until tomorrow, he cried, to get that creature out of the pool. Let's think about our characters on this page. How do the coach's feelings about Alphonse seem different from Louis's feelings about Alphonse? The coach is scared because Alphonse is something he does not know. Louis loves him and isn't afraid of him, though. Let's also take a moment to practice inferring, predicting. After reading these 2 pages, think about what has happened in our story. Now the coach tells Louis to get Alphonse out of the pool. What do you think will happen next? When you're ready, you can continue on to the next page. Louis telephoned his friend, Miss Zephers, the librarian, and asked her for her help. I'll be right there, she said. Miss Zephers rushed to meet Louis at the high school. When she saw Alphonse, she was so startled that she dropped her purse into the water. Retrieve, said Louis, and Alphonse did. Where did this astounding animal come from? Cried Miss Zephers. He was a birthday gift from my uncle, Louis replied. Let's pause for a moment. What happens after Louis calls the librarian, Miss Zephers? Yes, Miss Zephers rushes to the school. She is so surprised when she sees Alphonse that she drops her purse in the water, and Alphonse retrieves it. Now, rather than being startled, she's more intrigued and interested in this new creature. Let's find out what happens next. Miss Severs telephoned Uncle McAllister. "Oh, the wee tadpole," he said. "Why, he came from the lake nearby. It's the one folks call Loch Ness." "Brace yourself, Louis," Miss Severs said. "I believe your uncle found the Loch Ness monster." "I don't care," cried Louis. "Alphonse is my friend, and I love him." He pleaded with Miss Severs to help him raise enough money to buy the parking lot so he could build a big swimming pool for Alphonse. Friends, what does Louis still want to do? Do you think he will do it? Why or why not? Let's take a closer look at this picture. In the picture, we see Miss Severs pointing to a newspaper article that says, "Scientists search Loch Ness for mysterious monster." Oh boy. I wonder who's right. Is Lewis correct? Is this a tadpole? Or is Miss Severs correct? Is this the Loch Ness monster? How did she even come up with that idea that it could be the Loch Ness monster? Can you find text evidence here that helps us understand? Then you can push play again and move on to the next page. Suddenly, Miss Severs had an idea. "Long ago, a pirate ship sank in the harbor," she said. "No one has ever been able to find it or its treasure chest, but perhaps we can." Look at page 400 here. What is happening in this picture? Wow, I see beavers are chewing holes in and sinking a pirate ship. How crazy! Could this really happen? Why or why not? What do you think is really happening here? Lewis is imagining how the ship sank. Lewis is at the bottom of the picture, and the scene seems to be swirling around in his head. This is all what he is imagining. The next morning, they drove to the harbor and rented a boat. "This is a treasure chest!" cried Lewis. "Retrieve!" Alphonse disappeared under the water and returned with the chest. It was filled with gold and jewels. "Let's buy the parking lot and get to work," cried Miss Severs. Friends, why is Alphonse able to find the treasure? How does Miss Severs help Louis and Alphonse? Louis's parents were shocked to see a construction crew in the parking lot. "Louis," they cried, "what in the world is going on here?" "Alphonse found a pirate treasure ship," explained Louis, "and we used part of our gold to buy you this present." Why are Louis's parents shocked when they return home? What makes this surprising? Louis's parents were shocked once again. "Tickets for a vacation cruise to Hawaii?" They gasped. "And," said Louis, "you don't have to worry about us because Granny has agreed to babysit." They hugged Louis. They kissed Alphonse. "How soon can we leave?" they cried. "Immediately," said Louis. Why does Louis use some of the treasure to send his parents on vacation while the pool is being built? By the time Louis's parents returned, the swimming pool was being enjoyed by everyone in the city. A week later, Louis said, "Alphonse, tomorrow is my birthday, which means that you've been my best friend for a whole year." The next day, Uncle McAllister arrived for the party. "Greetings, Louis, my lad," he exclaimed. "I've come with a curious stone from the hills of Scotland. Happy birthday!" "Wow, thanks," said Louis. Suddenly, the stone began to tremble and crack. All right, friends, in the end of this story, how does Louis finally solve his problem? He uses the money from the pirate treasure to build a swimming pool for Alphonse. Now he can keep his best friend, but his parents don't have to have Alphonse in their home. Look at this illustration on page 404. What new problem do you think Louis has now? Friends, you should now copy down your story structure. Let's take a look back at the beginning of our story where we can see our story structure map. We now know our characters, our setting, and our plot with our problem and solution. If you did not complete this story structure map yesterday, please take a few moments to do that now. How is the problem with Alphonse solved? What problem might this new birthday gift cause? Think about everything we learned in our story and take a few minutes to carefully go through your story map and make sure you have everything correct. Great job listening today, friends. Make sure you use your text evidence when you do your writing today.